Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Meeting number 5 of the interim meeting on licensing, occupation, and administrative regulations. We have a full agenda, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to remind all the members that directly after the meeting, we're going to have a delicious lunch sponsored by the Kentucky Distillers Association, which will be down at their office. I'm sure we're going to have a big turnout, so there's extra parking across the street at the VFW Hall. Senator Neal, are you on yet? Madam Secretary, call the roll.
Senator Adams. Senator Higdon. Senator Hornback. Senator Howell.
Present in the room.
Senator McDaniel. Senator Neal. Senator Nemus.
Present in the room.
Senator Thayer.
Here in the room.
Senator Thomas. Representative Bantam.
Here in the room.
Representative Bratcher.
Here in the room.
Representative Birch.
Here in the room.
Representative Flannery.
Here in the room.
Representative Gentry. Representative Huff. Representative Cook.
Remotely from the 72nd District.
Thank you. Representative Massey. Representative McCoy. Representative Meeks. Representative Meredith.
Present in the room.
Representative Miller.
Here in the room.
Representative Moser.
Here in the room.
Representative Palumbo.
Here in my annex office.
Thank you. Representative Pratt.
Remotely from the 62nd District.
Thank you. Representative Santoro.
In my home district.
Thank you. Representative Timoney.
Here in the room.
Representative Westrom. Chairman Koenig.
Here in the room.
Chairman Schickel.
Present.
And I'm present from my office. This is Ed Massey.
Welcome, Representative Mass.
Noted. Thank you.
Senator Neal, are you on yet? I know he has some guests here, and I wanted to give him an opportunity to recognize them, but I'm sure he'll be joining us shortly. We do have a quorum, or duly constituted to do business. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting. I hear a motion. Is there a second? Second. The motion's been made and duly seconded. All those in favor use voting sign of aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Let the record reflect that the minutes have been adopted. Chairman Koenig, do you have anything that you want to share with us?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. At this time, I want to observe a moment of silence for Bryce Ambergy's father. Bryce, I think you're in the room here. Are you here, Bryce? Yeah, there you are. We adopted a memorial resolution the last committee meeting, but he has lost his father, and many of us have been through that, and we know what it's like, and our thoughts and prayers are with you, and we will have a moment of silence. Thank you. Our first item we'll take today will be number 5 on the agenda, the Department of Housing, Building, and Construction update. Our friend Commissioner Rick Rand, former state representative, former committee chair, and now commissioner, is with us. Welcome to this committee. Introduce yourselves for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We appreciate the opportunity you are giving us here today. I'm Rick Rand. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Housing, Building and Construction. On my left is Max Fuller, who is our Deputy Commissioner, and on my right is Benjamin Siegel, who is our General Counsel.
Thank you. I don't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to point out to the members that they do have a handout in the back of their folder which has been presented for your presentation. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you all of you all know, I'm sure the Department of Housing, Building, Construction, we're primarily responsible for inspections and licensing for the trades, electrical, plumbing, building code enforcement, those type of things. We do everything, I like to tell people, from approving hot water heater installation in homes to plan review on projects just like the one we'll do in Hardin County with the Ford Motor Company coming up, things as complex as that. So we are a key agency, I believe, in the economic development structure of the state of Kentucky, and we take that very seriously and find it very important. Our primary reason to be here today is to share with you all that we would intend to file sort of a reorganization, I guess we could call it, bill, that will help us reestablish advisory boards. Currently, we're working with one advisory board that meets quarterly, that we talk to about any regulation change, any fee change, any changes that we may have, and get advice from them. We have received communication over the past year and actually put out what can we do better. And most of the organizations that we work with, the home builders, Kentucky Association of Contractors, labor groups, architects, engineers, said we would like the advisory boards to go back similar to the way they had been in the past, where we had trade-specific advisory boards. We had a plumbing advisory board, an electrical advisory board, a building code enforcement advisory board. And so, as you can see in your handout, we would like to go back to that. We think it is helpful for us, and we know the industries prefer that because it gives them a little more ability to weigh in on regulations that we may have in effect or contemplate changing, if we're having fee changes, things like that. And it helps us build consensus with key industry groups and trade groups around the state that affect all of us. So we are probably, and we intend during this session to bring a bill that will take us back to those advisory boards. And you can see from the handout the number of people that would be on there. You know, obviously, they would fall along the lines of most advisory boards. They would be organizations would recommend names to the governor make appointments. They would serve for 3 years. Anything that we do over there in terms of regulations, fee changes, that sort of thing has to go through our advisory boards. We have to get their consent before we start the process and bring the process over to you all. So that is our intention for being here today, Mr. Chair, because I know you like any legislation that may come before your committee during the session to be vetted in the interim, and that is our real reason for being here. So that is what I don't know if he either has anything to offer.
Well, you're welcome to speak. We do have your hand out, but you're welcome to testify.
Yeah. Any questions? We're glad.
We do have a question.
Sure.
Also. You want to testify or you want questions?
No, go ahead.
Senator Thayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a comment because yesterday I was very hard on administration officials who testified via Zoom. And I just want to give Commissioner Rand and his colleagues credit for showing up in person today. Frankly, I think it should be the policy of the entire General Assembly that if you're going to testify in front of a committee, you should do it in person. So I'm glad you're here today, and it will be more likely that we remember your testimony when it comes time for us to consider this bill. So
thank you.
Well done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. If it's any silence, I don't know if it's the policy of the General Assembly, but it is the policy of the Senate L&O Committee. Yeah. Chairman Koenig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you. Commissioner Rand, are these items that used to exist and I assume were removed in the last administration?
Yes, it was changed in the last administration. Before then, they did have the more trade-specific advisory boards. That's correct.
It explain to me why we have to create advisory boards for you to get input, and you can't get input otherwise without the advisory boards?
We can, but this makes it more formal, where we meet quarterly. It gives us an opportunity to talk about not just on regulations and those sorts of things, but what the department's doing, what we can do better. And it does make it the what we refer to as the super board, the one advisory board. Usually each trade maybe has only one appointment to that. And we have found that we just don't get the kind of feedback that we think is important for our department, and all of these organizations. Really, I mean, the impetus of this is not really us. It's mainly the organizations we represent feel like that they have more input and an ability to help shape regulations for the industries that they work in. So that's the reason.
I look forward to hearing from those industries. It sounds like it's an additional step in getting some things to the final situation, whether it be regs or something else. And I know we've tried to, a lot of times we want to speed those up rather than slow them down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you, Mr.
Well,
Chairman.
well, it's not going to be an additional step. We have to do it the big advisory board now, but it would just be more specific to theirs. But yes.
We got three people wanting to ask. Senator Higdon will be next, and then after that will be Representative Meredith. Senator Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Commissioner Rand, I don't know if any of the other members have contacted your department for help, and we do need help from time to time. And I just want to thank you for being available and always conscientious about the request, and I appreciate that. On going to the separate boards, we just want to make sure that they're industry friendly, or for the building industry, that we don't over-regulate. And so there's always that concern when you do administrative regs, and I'm sure you're aware of that you don't want to get a lot of pushback from the industry. We want them to be safe and want them to be regulated, but not over-regulated. So.
And you're exactly right, and that's one reason we like the trade specific advisory boards, because it really gives us an opportunity to have people there that are interested in a particular regulation to help us vet it, because we want to build consensus. We don't want to come over here to bring a reg before the legislature and there be conflict.
One other comment, Mr. Chairman.
You may.
And, what we like is for the building industry to be regulated, but not our phone ringing off the hook about over-regulation. Somebody complain about, what are these guys thinking? Or what are they doing to us? So, and I think you understand that.
Yes.
Regulate them, but don't over-regulate them. Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you.
Representative Meredith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, I'll echo what Senator Higdon said. I appreciate you working with us on a couple of different projects that have come up over the last year or so. It's always good to have a familiar face and somebody that you know to reach out to over there. With regard to this, I think the proposal makes a lot of sense, because you don't want electricians making the decisions about what a plumber needs to do in the building code. And so I see where this advisory board can be very helpful. My question is this: with regard to expanding this back out and having the additional advisory board members, I assume there are some expenses at least associated with that. What is the level of increased expense to implement this, and where will those costs be borne from?
Well, and you're right. Right now, the advisory board, the members get a $50 per meeting per diem, plus their expenses. So, they're going to be more people. We expect it to be an additional cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $6,000 to $7,000, maybe a little bit more than that, depending on the expenses for people to drive up, maybe stay the night for a meeting. And, they'll be more out of our budgets. Almost all the revenue that we bring in at Housing Building Construction is through a restricted revenue through fees. We have very, very limited general fund dollars that run through our department over there, but we would be able to sustain those costs, yes. And if I could just follow up on one thing that Senator Higdon,
you may briefly.
And I'm happy to take calls from anybody about projects in your area that you get calls on. I know Senator Higdon has and Representative Meredith have, and I'm always happy to. That's part of what I do is try to, be the person that if there's an issue going on in your district with a specific project or a specific issue that involves us, I welcome any phone calls.
Thank you for saying that. Representative Palumbo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a comment to Commissioner Rand that I look forward to working with you the rest of this session and during the 2022 session.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Santoro.
Commissioner Rand, I have a question. You mentioned earlier about the Ford factory. Do you have enough personnel? I know you guys have to be thin. We need to keep that project moving. I just want to make sure if you need some personnel, get them hired. That's all my comment is.
We, and I'll answer this way. In 2008, and I chaired the Appropriations and Revenue Committee then here in the House. Many state agencies were hollowed out during that time, and for good reason. We just didn't have the money. And we're experiencing some of that at housing, building, and construction, where people left through attrition. We haven't been able to backfill those positions, and the economy's booming. I mean, we are experiencing a heavy workload because of the economy, and when things like the Ford plant in Hardin County, that's just, and the spinoffs that will come from that. So, to answer your question, yes, we probably do need more people there to be able to just keep up. In certain areas, not all areas, but some areas, to be able to maintain a level of service that industries expect.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you, Representative Santoro. Anyone else? Very well. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for coming up and testifying.
Thank you very much.
Senator Neal, are you on? Senator Neal?
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. You're looking good. I understand you have some very special guests you want to introduce.
Well, that is true. I have some very special guests, and I just want you to know that I appreciate you extending this courtesy. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there today. I had doctor's appointments, and I was very upset with myself that those clash. But I have I'm very excited about the fact that we are visited today at the Capitol by Sierra Davis, but actually Ella Davis, her daughter, who is a fifth grader, who's present with you now, and her mother, Sierra Davis.
If they could stand up so we could all see who they are. There they are in the back.
They are visiting the Capitol as part of the educational process, have taken a tour this morning, and they wanted to sit in and see how a committee is run. So fortunate to have the L&O committee meeting this morning, and they're having the ability to experience it. So hello to Mrs. Davis and to Ella, and thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for this courtesy.
You're very welcome. Ella, if you would like to come up here and sit with the committee, we'd like to extend that invitation to you. I think there's one seat left up here. We sure could use your help. Come on up here. Here she comes, and she's got her folder, so guys, you better sharpen your pencils.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Someone's going to have to take a picture of you and your assistant before she leaves, I'm sure.
We'll do that. We'll do that. We'll do that. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's moving along on our agenda. The next item we're going to have is an act relating to welding safety. This is not a topic I'm familiar with this committee. I want to ask my good friend, Representative Bobby McCool, to come forward. And all the people, it's one big happy family here that are involved in this. I see Brian Miller back there. We're going to have the people that are for and against all come forward together. Senator Wheeler, you have something to say? Well, he's a good man, I can tell you that. Brian, come on up. Who else is here has a problem? Derek Clemens, are you on remote?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Okay, now, okay, we're getting the bashful people coming up now. Okay, here we go. Okay. If you're here in support of this bill, raise your hand. Okay, so we got four against, 4, 2 against. Okay, well, Bobby, first of all, I want to thank you for your patience on this bill. We've been at this for a long time. So introduce yourself for the record and your guests and proceed with your testimony. We have 15 minutes allotted for this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll certainly be brief. My name is Bobby McCool. I'm the state representative of the 97th District, and I'd like to ask the ones to my left and right introduce themselves. Is that okay?
Senator Philip Wheeler, 31st District. I share Morgan County with Bobby.
Tim Pinson, 30 years in the welding facility, 25 years as CWI.
Bill Woodward, 5th General Vice President of the Ironworkers International, certified welder since 1980.
Welcome, gentlemen. Proceed with your testimony.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and for allowing this opportunity and members of this committee. Certainly, we have codes in our daily life on everything from ASC for automotive, for electrical codes, plumbing codes, continues on and on and on. And that's what this is about. This is about following a code book. And if you haven't ever seen one, I thought I'd bring a visual today. This is the one we're talking about today. This is the D1.1 code book from the American Welding Society. These code books are for any code, are for safety, for the individual and property. That's why you need to follow those. This bill will also level the playing ground for those who are contractors and interested in applying and bidding on jobs, because that way, if everybody follows the same rules as the engineer puts out, then everybody has equal access to the bids or on the level in the playing ground. This is it's a simple bill, but at the same time, it's a very serious bill. It's simple as it only asks you to follow this code book when the engineer puts it in the specifications. And I think hopefully you did receive that in the package as well, showing how the specifications are in those
Let me check. Yes, we have it in there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's simple. It's only asking you to follow what the design engineer puts forth. When the design engineer is asking you to follow the D11 code book from the American Welding Society, there's a reason for that. It's safety. And it references this safety book because there's been years and years and years of practice to ensure that the procedures and quality is embedded in the process. It's simple that it only applies to public buildings and bridges when recommended by the engineer. It doesn't apply to all welding applications. So it only applies when the engineer puts it in the specifications. It's serious because when people believe or have confidence then that the buildings and bridges that are built within the safety codes, in this case it's the D1.1. It's serious, and if we deviate from these code books, then we can cause harm to individuals and property. Lives have been lost for not following codes. It's simple, it's serious, that we just follow what the engineer has put forth in specifications. I'm not asking for anything more or anything less. And again, it doesn't apply to all welding applications, nor should it. Only when the engineer puts it in the specifications. With that, I'd like to turn to Bill.
I just want to.
You need to turn your mic on there. The little green light will come on right after you hit that button. That puts you on the record very well.
Is that better?
I
just want to address some questions that come up the last few times in front of committee, that this would increase the cost of contractors sending their welders to these facilities across the state of Kentucky. We have 7 AWS accredited facilities in Kentucky. We have 412 CWIs that will come to your place of business. They will come to your job site. They will come to wherever you ask them to come to and do the testing at your facility at your convenience. So the employers don't have to travel anywhere. Tim here is one of those people that will come and do those tests.
Yes.
So that will save the contractors money, actually. So keep in mind, 412 CWIs across the state of Kentucky. That will go anywhere. You don't have to travel. It will not increase your cost. The training facility, it was commented that this is going to increase the cost at training facilities. They would have to upgrade and become an AWS facility. Completely false. You can take your training anywhere you want, whether it be Hobart, FFA, in the garage with your dad. It does not matter where you take your training. This does not affect training facilities. This affects where you get your certifications. And that's all. This has nothing to do with training facilities. Certifications, there was a comment that certifications are not transferable to employers. AWS certifications are the welder certifications. They go with the welder. They stay with the welder. So he can go work with any employer anywhere in the state. They're his certifications, and he can use those certifications. Again, this is a safety bill. It's not a non-union issue. We've had Paducah school collapse. We've had another school collapse, Blackbird School. Bad welding causes school to collapse. Bluegrass Army Depot, 4,000 deficient welds that had to be redone. UK University was caught using falsified papers. They had to go back in, re-inspect, re-weld. If this legislation was in place, we wouldn't be wasting taxpayers and insurance money. The case of Paducah, Kentucky, I just want to reiterate this. The contractor got paid for putting the steel up. It blew down because of fake weld papers, bad welds. He got paid for taking the bad steel up, got paid for putting the new steel up. He got convicted of insurance fraud and went out of business. We've been working on this since 2011.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Is there anyone else have any testimony different than what we've already heard? Additional testimony? Philip, why don't you, or I'm sorry.
I'd just like to chime in. I mean,
I apologize for calling you by your first name, Senator,
absolutely.
Senator Wheeler.
Well, Chairman Schickel, it's an honor to appear before your committee.
Well, it's an honor to have you here.
You always run a tight ship, and I think everybody here admires you for that. I think Bobby said it best. We're just asking folks to follow the rules put in place by an engineer. As an attorney, I can tell you of countless cases where people have been injured simply because folks don't follow the rules. And, you know, one of the things that, you know, is there a cost to following the rules? Of course there is. But, you know, when you compare that to a child getting killed maybe by a faulty weld where it causes a roof to fall, or a busload of kids going across a bridge, you know, goes into the river. I mean, these are the types of things that have happened because folks don't do what they're supposed to do.
Right.
And also, we've talked about workforce development. I mean, I just got out of an economic development committee meeting where the chamber did a very extensive presentation on workforce development, talking about how we can make more educated and create a superior workforce. I think that Bobby's bill goes hand in hand with that. Bobby is not only an advocate, he's one of the guys that I think there's nobody in this General Assembly. Well, I think we have Matt Castle in the Senate and Bobby in the House. Both Bobby's top welding for how many years, Bobby? 30 years? And I tell you what, you can ask for no better friend than this man.
He is a good man. Thank you, Senator. I think we would all agree with that. We have some folks here now that want to speak in opposition to the bill, and what I like to do is get some short testimony from them, and then maybe we can have some back and forth, and that's why I wanted everyone here together. We have Brian Miller, we have Shad Sledo, and we have Derek Clemens. And you mentioned Matt Caslin, and I think I talked to him yesterday, and he did tell me he opposes this bill. But so whoever wants to start off, go ahead and start. Identify yourself. No, you can stay there. Identify yourselves for the record, gentlemen, and please proceed. Hello? Opposition?
Yes, sir. This is Derek Clemens. I'd be happy to start if that's good.
That's fine. Go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
My name is Derek Clemens. I'm Vice President and General Manager of Stutbridge Company in a native Kentuckian. I've worked in manufacturing fabrication over 26 years, including as a design engineer and a manager of a large fabrication and welding operation. We're a large family-owned structural steel fabricator here in Bowling Green that we've been operating since 1856. We've been involved with the American Institute of Steel Construction, AISC, since its beginning, and we work with the organizations and engineers noted with AWS, ASHTO, which is the
Hey, Derek.
state highway. Yes, sir.
Let me just ask you a question, right? Let's cut right to this. What about, you've heard the testimony. I've heard testimony on this probably 3 different interims. And you've heard some powerful testimony. I don't know whether it's, and I want you to tell me whether it's accurate or not. And I'm going to ask the same question to the other people that follow you about this is a safety issue, that this is causing welding accidents. Please address that. I think that's what everyone on this panel is concerned about.
Well, to make a long story short, I would the requirements that we're talking about already exist in code, and fabricators such as ourselves already have to follow those rules. The D1.1, AWS D1.1 document that's been referred to does require qualification of welders, but it does not specifically require CWIs to qualify welders. The engineer's documents that we have to follow for each job already make these things that we're talking about a requirement. So, our view is that it's redundant. The rules already exist, and if people are going to violate those rules, they're going to violate them whether they're coded here in a bill or not. But I would say that that's just the gist of it. It would be placing a burden on the compliant while not necessarily doing anything to the rule breakers, as there's no additional compliance enforcement or oversight included in the bill.
Well, I know you run a large company there in your part of the state, and so I guess what I'm hearing you say is you take issue with the fact that this is a safety issue.
I mean, the base issue of good welding is absolutely a safety issue. I think so. It's certainly well intentioned. I believe my point is that there exists already sufficient specification and regulation in the industry, and the examples that have led to the creation of the bill. I don't know that, without additional enforcement and compliance, I'm not sure how that changes anything.
Thank you. Brian Miller is here. He drove down from Northern Kentucky, and he's testified on this bill numerous times, probably 4 or 5 times over the years. And he's here again today. Brian, introduce yourself for the record. Grab your microphone there and proceed with your testimony. Maybe we'll have some questions.
Yeah, my name is Brian Miller. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Building Industry Association of Northern Kentucky. We represent both residential, commercial, and industrial builder developers throughout a 12-county jurisdiction under the auspices of the National Association of Home Builders. We have operated the Enswater Building Institute since 1967 and have a long successful track history of educating trades professionals for over 50 years. Part of the courses that we teach are in welding, and we have what we believe are some of the best privately employed welders teaching as our instructors in our institute, and have done so for years, producing welders for what's most important is good employers who can employ these people. First off, want to stop and I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen of the community for allowing us to testify today, and especially in person. It's been a long time. It kind of reminds me of an old Boston song. We would agree a lot with Mr. Clemens' testimony, the fact that this really does not address welding safety. Nobody in the industry wants to see buses of school children meet their demise or structures fall down. Nothing in this bill would stop false filing of false certifications. Those are things that happen outside of the purview of the language of this bill. Mr. Sletto will also testify today some more details, but from a broad brush standpoint, Mr. Chairman, we believe that just like other regulated portions of the construction industry, be them residential, commercial, or industrial, that good inspections result in qualified structures that hold up and have good performance. So inspections in our area are conducted by professional inspectors across our region and other regions of the state, and we believe that good partnerships with qualified inspectors result in a good work product, not simply filing paperwork and creating work for folks that, quite frankly, are already inundated with a paperwork nightmare and a maze that they have to transgress on a daily basis.
Thank you, Brian. And we have Shad Slato, who a business person who also has testified numerous times on this issue. Welcome, Shad. Introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm sorry I cannot be in person. I'm on my own personal time here doing this. I work for a company that builds buildings. I've done that for 25 years in the state of Kentucky. As an employer and a builder, we're more responsible for the safety of a building than any certified welder is. And I will tell you that this bill has nothing to do with safety of buildings. It actually could make buildings less safe, and I'll explain why. First of all, certification does not equal capability. Capability of welders is measured by a continuity log that has to be updated every 6 months. Certifications have to be updated every 6 months. If we have to ask our welders to be certified by a third party independent out of California, every 6 months they have to submit a fee and their weld continuity log to demonstrate that. The continuity log is not signed by a certified welding instructor. It's typically signed by a supervisor who can be a certified welding instructor and often is. I will say that also these welding certifications are not portable. There are no employers in the state or in the country, including unions, who will accept a third-party certification from any other entity other than their own personal test at the time a welder is employed. I can tell you that we've had multiple, and I worked for a fabricator, erector, for 20 years. We had multiple people come to us with certifications that were useless. They could not pass our test. They were not employed. The employer is responsible for safety, and their employer is responsible for the quality of welds. I will also say that what is required for certification through the American Welding Society, although we'd love to understand that we could have these random tests done in various areas, the American Welding Society requires these tests to be certified by the American Welding Society as specified in the law to be done in a certified testing facility. And I will tell you that that does not happen in very frequent locations, at very convenient locations, especially when we're welding all over the state and often in rural areas. So in addition to the fact that certifications are done, or the certification of a welder is done currently, it's not necessarily met by the American Welding Standards, American Welding Society's standards, because that's the cost and the bureaucracy of maintaining that certification over the course of years. I will also say that the requirements of D11, which are mentioned before, and would love to be able to say they're just for public buildings or they're just for bridges, apply to every structural member that any engineer, or for that matter, architect would choose to include in the specifications. As stated, that's a building code. We live to building codes every day. Every builder has to build to the code, regardless of licensure or certification. That is requirement. And those D11 specs, D1.1, and I apologize for speaking so fast, but the reality is that those can apply to railings, stairs, mechanical equipment, structures. It doesn't apply just to the joists, deck, and structural columns that hold up a roof or a mezzanine. or a second floor. And reality is we want those to be as safe as anyone. No one wants more safety than us, and ultimately the builder and just developers are responsible. Therefore, if you want true safety, you have to employ a third-party inspector. In the districts I work in, okay, the areas I work in, the municipalities that I work under for building permits require third-party safety or inspections. And I will say that I've talked to many inspectors, not myself included. Fortunately, I've not had the misfortune or tragedy of having a building collapse or any structural members for that matter. But I will say that talking to inspectors who are responsible for forensic audits, including the collapse of a mezzanine in Cincinnati, was not due to faulty welds. It was due to construction methods and sequence. It's effectively due to the fact that the projects weren't managed properly. And there's mistakes made, mistakes happen. Had nothing to do with certified welds.
Thank you. I think we've had a pretty good testimony from both sides. Do any of the members have any questions for this distinguished panel? Senator Meredith, or Representative Meredith, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Representative McCool, I have the utmost respect for you, obviously. You are a great member of this General Assembly and appreciate what you're doing. The one thing that I would have a little bit of concern with in this is it seems to me that the bill puts a great deal of vesting in the opinion of the engineer solely and takes away the opinion of the actual practitioner in a situation like this. And I'm going to take that down a path for just a moment, if I may. My grandfather was a 50-year plus lifetime member of his trade union in the construction industry as a operator. And I know he told me the story once upon a time about building a road in my area of the state, and the engineer's spec was to crown a hillside road in instead of crowning it out. And as the bulldozer operator on that project, he went to the supervisor that was over him, mentioned his concerns about that project at the time, and the fact that it was going to create some problems. And the engineer that was on site for that project was called in to look at the spec and to look at the practicing of what was being done there. And he said, "No, I wrote the spec. This is how it's going to be done." And so they had no choice. The supervisor and my grandfather built or did the work as they were told to do. The next morning they came in and that entire portion of the road where they had done the work was flooded. And it was exactly what the supervisor and the practitioner in that situation knew should have been done correctly, but the engineer spec'd it the wrong way. And so I would ask that question is, what is the purview then of the people who are actually doing this work versus the engineer who is creating a spec in that situation?
Whoever would like to answer.
Thank you, Representative. That's certainly a good comment, and I appreciate that. What I would say with this, the engineer doesn't necessarily have all the welding skills of the person on the job. They probably don't, but they have a tremendous background in engineering. So they know about the strengths and the weaknesses and the loads and those kind of, and where to apply it. And they reference the D11 in this case, or the D1.5. I should have mentioned that as well. That's also, they reference that code book who has, for years, they're constantly reviewing that to make sure that it's up to the latest standards and codes and those type of things, procedures. So I don't know how that really applies to this one, but I hear what you're saying, that those on the ground often have much more knowledge about the ins and outs of that, but at the same time, as long as you follow the code book, then it's been proven over time and history that you're going to come out with a much more safer environment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Flannery.
Representative McCool, this appears to be the same language from your House Bill 24 during the 21 session. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. I just want to, if I can, Mr. Chairman, just like to compliment Representative McCool for staying on this issue and co-sponsored this bill. Be glad to co-sponsor it for the 22 session, and would like to comment that this bill did pass the House 93-0, and to me it is a safety bill, and I would encourage fellow members to support this bill.
Senator Thayer. The deck's cleared, I believe.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative McCool, I'm wondering who's going to play you in the Groundhog Day movie about this bill?
I don't know if they can find somebody that ugly. So
I mean, I was thinking Brad Pitt. So this is one of these situations that we often get in this committee where we're asked to mediate between two sides that are made up of people we like on both sides. And this bill is kind of like Groundhog Day because every year it flies through the House 98-0, and then Senator Caslen comes to me with his hair on fire, and all my friends from Northern Kentucky who are opposed to this ask me to step in and kill the bill, which that's part of the job that I have, and but I don't like it when it's sponsored by a friend of mine who has the best surname of anyone in the legislature. I mean, come on, McCool. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. So, is there any way that you all can get together and work out some sort of compromise with Senator Caslen and the folks who my friend Brian Miller and Shad Sletto represent to get a bill that we could consider? Because I don't see that anything has changed in the last couple of years that would engender the kind of support necessary to bring this bill to the floor for a vote in the Senate. Is there any way that some of the points that have been brought up here today could be ameliorated and get us to a point where you could all sing Kumbaya and we could pass this bill?
Senator, thank you. I certainly would love to have that opportunity, and I have driven to Northern Kentucky to meet with Shad and talk to him. But I think it needs a more in-depth conversation, and we need to see if where can we cross these barriers and get beyond where we're at today. Everybody's interested. Even the opposition to this bill was still about safety. So how do we get common ground? How do we meet it? So yes, I'd be very willing to do that.
Thank you. And I know these guys who have spoken opposition, and they're some of the best people I know, and they care about safety as much as you do. And Senator Caslen he's in this industry and has to worry about safety every day with his company down in Owensboro and Bowling Green and wherever his empire is spreading to these days. So it's just going to be very hard for us to pass the bill over the vigorous opposition of one of our members. So here it is, October. Let's see if you can't figure something out so we don't have to take steps late in the session to try to do it then. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming here to testify today, and those that are here, and thank you for your patience. Do you wish to be recognized, sir?
Yes, sir.
You're recognized. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you.
Turn your mic on and be brief.
I think this bill's getting convoluted with a lot of information. It's a very simple bill. When the job specs say it requires AWS certified welders, we would like those welders to go to an AWS facility or have an inspector come to their facility and get tested under their rules where they're witnessed, the plates get stamped. We're trying to do away with these fake certifications.
Thank you. You have the last word. We're going to move on. And, private selection distilled spirits. We save the best to last. Welcome. We understand that there's a nice lunch awaiting us, so we're all very excited about that. And I want to say a few words about PowerPoint presentations so there's no misunderstanding. There's been a rumor flying around the annex that I don't allow PowerPoints, and that is not exactly true. We do allow PowerPoints as long as they are tailored to the presentation and the presenter seeks permission to use the PowerPoint, and our distinguished Chris Nolan has punched all those holes. The PowerPoints that we don't like are the ones that people pull out of file cabinets that are 2 and 3 years old, dust them off, and come running in here and read them to us for about 30 minutes. Those are the ones that we don't like. So welcome, introduce yourself for the record, and proceed with your testimony.
Hi, I'm Eric Gregory. I'm president of the Kentucky Distillers Association.
Sarah Osborne. I'm on the government relations team for KDA.
And Chris Nolan on the government relations team for KDA. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for having us today. I think you all are very familiar with our organization, the Kentucky Distillers Association. We're up to 52 members these days with 65 operating distilleries.
And our mission since 1880 has been to, as most of you know, promote, protect, and elevate the signature industry. As you can see before you, I think most of these numbers are things that this committee is very familiar with. We are proud to supply 95% of the world's bourbon here in Kentucky. But I do want to highlight a couple of the new numbers at the bottom that are part of our new economic report that will be coming out and we'll be sharing with all of you very soon. $5 billion in capital investment here in the state, and many of you heard $200 million of that just announced on Tuesday in Somerset. So this is now an industry that is not just in Bardstown or the Golden Triangle, but touching every part of the Commonwealth. And also just highlighting the new investment numbers as far as $300 million in local and state taxes coming back and $1.8 billion in federal excise taxes.
And we wanted to pause for just a moment and say thank you, especially to this committee and all the members on this committee. As our industry has grown, especially over the past few years, you guys have gone above and beyond to assist our industry in passing legislation that allows us to grow. And as we're going to show today, that the boom is doing very well. Our production numbers are up. We're up 436% in production, which is fantastic. But our industry does face unprecedented challenges. And that's what we wanted to kind of set the table today and provide some context to our legislative agenda. The industry in Kentucky is facing exorbitant taxes. We have a trade and tariff war that's going on with our counterparts overseas. Like many other businesses, we face the COVID pandemic problems, but we have an unsustainable regulatory environment here in Kentucky, and we're facing increased competition from other states.
We understand that there is often some sentiment of alcohol fatigue up here and in Frankfort, but for us to continue to grow and meet our consumer demands, we need permissive language from you all. And so we will continue to be here probably until your new member, Ella, is actually elected and casting votes on this committee, making asks of you to help us continue to grow and meet those consumer demands.
So the backdrop of what we're facing today is there are almost 2,300 distilleries now around the United States. When Eric was hired to lead the association and when Sarah and I joined that effort, there were 6 distilleries that we represented in Kentucky. There were basically 6 distillers in all of Kentucky. Now there are 2,300 around the country, and this map shows that they're all over the place. And if you'll see, there are bigger numbers in other states, whether it's 203 in California or 128 in Texas. And I think this quote kind of sums up Kentucky's situation today, and this is from a popular online site. And I just want to highlight it for a second, that it reads, this is from 2 weeks ago. Bourbon feels intrinsically connected to Kentucky. 95% of the juice is made here. But bourbon does not have to come from Kentucky. When it comes to rules about location, the only one that matters is what's made in the U.S. And with bourbon booming, barriers to entry decreasing, and craft distillers thriving, that 95% number is starting to drop as bourbon distillers pop up nationwide. That is the message that we want to get across to this committee today, and it is the backdrop for the legislation that we're asking you all to support. Again, this is a headline that we would not have seen 5 years ago today. What are the best-selling whiskeys from outside Kentucky. And this is Whiskey Advocate magazine from just this month. And we would not have seen headlines like this 5 years ago, beyond the bluegrass. And then the next story is about the big state of Texas and the whiskeys that are in Texas. So we are falling behind as a state in terms of lowering barriers to entry for this industry. We want these craft distillers to come to Kentucky, to locate here. But as you can see on this slide, the number of distilleries have grown 146% in just 5 years. 10 states now have more distilleries than we do. They all have lower taxes, and as you can see, lots of other privileges that other states are giving their distilleries to lure them to go to their state. But perhaps the biggest key indicator, and when we talk about stats and numbers, is this slide alone. Just a little more than 10 years ago, 43% of the distilling jobs were in Kentucky, around the United States. We had 43% of the industry here in Kentucky. Today, as we sit here, we have 30%, a very drastic decline. So if Kentucky, we can't afford to lose our distilling monopoly, and what if the 95% starts to slip away? We start to lose the jobs, the capital investment, the taxes, and the tourism. You know, this is what our industry looked like 75 years ago or more today, is the top picture on that slide. And the bottom picture is what our distilleries look like today. They're transformative. We're responding to consumer demand and trying to be a more open and modern marketplace.
So what are the needs? Four fairly simple things that we're here to ask about today. The first one would be to eliminate the discriminatory barrel tax. The second one is to reduce the distilling industry's overall tax burden to keep us competitive with those other states. The third is to remove regulatory obstacles. And the fourth would be to provide parity with beer and wine.
So the barrel tax credit, I think most of you are probably familiar with that. In 2014, the General Assembly made the policy decision to allow us a refund on those barrel taxes that we pay. And it is a tax credit against the corporate taxes that we pay, the bourbon barrel tax reinvestment credit. And we take that money that we get back and reinvest it in our industries. However, our industry has grown so much, we have outpaced that credit. And we basically don't get a chance to realize it or monetize it. This is the only jurisdiction, Kentucky, in the world that charges a tax on its aging spirit that is in our warehouses. So obviously, a big issue is that we're asking for refundability of our barrel tax credits. And we think in asking for that, we can show the return on investment. And this slide does just that. In a little more than 10 years, we have increased the amount of tax revenues we pay to the Commonwealth from $125 million in 2010. It has increased to more than $300 million today. And that number we will have updated with an updated economic development study that's coming later on this year. But that's a 140% increase. $175 million is what we've poured in to state government over just a 10-year span. So we're asking for a return of $33 million of that in order to reinvest it in our signature industry, and so as to not penalize production. And we do think that is a return on investment. So bringing us to the legislation that's in your packets today, dealing with private barrel selects and a few other privileges in order to lower those barriers to get into the marketplace.
And the first question about a private barrel selection is, what is it? So this is a unique and authentic opportunity that is available today to liquor stores, restaurants, a chef, individuals, where you can go and sample barrels and pick and purchase and have bottled those for you. So you have a unique experience. This is the future of the industry. This is what consumers are demanding. If you walk into a liquor store now in Northern Kentucky, you probably see that they have picked their barrel of New Riff and they're selling it to their consumers who come in. This is what people want. They want to feel like they're taking home something special they can share with their family and friends that you can't get everywhere. It has come to our attention from the ABC that this is something that's operating in a gray area. And as we talked about earlier, our statutes are permissive. And so they have asked us to partner and work with you all and make sure that we codify this practice so that it can continue to grow in the future, and we can offer this to more consumers as opportunities.
So the specifics of what's in this piece of legislation, we then codify what a private barrel selection is. So we define it in statute, what a private barrel selection event is. We define a private barrel package as a bottle that is being sold. We obviously need to go in and exempt the selection from the free sample sizes and bottle sale limits that we currently are under, because if you go in and do a barrel selection, you'll be tasting out of anywhere from 3 to 10 barrels, and you might taste above and beyond that 1.75 ounces of free spirits that you're allowed to taste in our visitor centers. And then the size of the barrel, when you ultimately, somebody or an entity purchases that barrel, it's anywhere from 150 to 225 bottles. And so the technicality of exempting those two things in the statute. But the other crux of this is the sales transaction that occurs around the private barrel select. And our distilleries have worked long and hard and decided that they want to be able to have the ability to sell that private barrel out of their visitor gift shop. And that would mean that it would not go through the three-tier transaction. And so that's the big issue there. But it doesn't mandate that sale occur in that manner. It simply gives it an option. So we allow 3 different options for the sale of that private barrel. It can go through the three-tier system the way it does today, to the wholesaler, to a retailer, and then you go pick it up from the liquor store. Or it could be direct shipped under Representative Koenig's House Bill 415 from the last 2 sessions. If the other state was a reciprocal state, it could be direct shipped and shipped via UPS. Or lastly, it could be sold out of our distillery gift shop, and the consumer, in that case, could take it home with them that day. And the vision is, when you go to do a private barrel select, it's not a 15-minute exercise. You spend an hour or 2 sampling different barrels to decide which one you want to pick. So the vision is you would do that. You would then go have lunch on the distillery grounds while that barrel is being dumped and prepared. You'd come back and be able to participate in the bottling of that and be able to help put the labels on, and then it would be packaged, and then you'd be able to take it home or take it back to your restaurant, take it back to your wherever you're going with it. This bill would also allow distilleries to sell those exclusive private barrel selects out of their gift shop. And we are, once again, for the 2nd or 3rd session in a row, asking for the sale of exclusive bottles in our distillery gift shops. It really drives tourism. When people come in from around the state and around the country and they walk into our distilleries, they want something unique that they can't get at home. And we want to be able to offer that to them. That's not to the exclusion of putting that bottle out in the marketplace, because we have to have our partners in the wholesale tier and in the retail tier to help get our product to all corners of the globe. But we also want to be able to sell something unique in our gift shop to really drive tourism. And finally, another big provision that's in this bill is satellite tasting rooms. And that is becoming really important for both our craft distillers and our big distillers. And let me explain how that would work. We have a distillery, one of our very first.
Isn't that the bill Chad McCoy's so interested in?
Yes.
And he couldn't be here today, wanted to be here today, but had a trial, and he really wanted to be here. I just wanted to let the members know that.
I forgot to mention
That's
that
all right.
at the very beginning. Yes, he wished he could be here to present this. So the satellite tasting rooms. So it kind of has 2 visions that we would like to do. So take MB Roland Distillery down in Hopkinsville in Western Kentucky, one of our very first craft members. They're 13 miles out into the county with their facility. They have a fair amount of land, and they've been producing bourbon for a good deal of time. The city of Hopkinsville wants them to open up a place in the downtown proper area, because they're trying to develop their downtown district. They have a restaurant, they actually have a brewery there, but they're trying to develop that critical mass, not from 9 to 5 during the day, but in the evening hours to bring back life to the town and the town square and all that sort of stuff. So they want MB Roland, and MB Roland wants to be able to locate in downtown Hopkinsville. But if we require them to build a still in downtown and everything that comes with it, it's cost prohibitive. This is a family distillery run by a husband and wife. So they have that opportunity, and they've come to us and say, we want to be able to do a satellite tasting room and be able to offer the samples, sell the bottles, potentially do drink sales and everything else to complement what happens in these small town communities. And the ironic thing is he already is proceeding with opening a satellite tasting room in Arizona. And because that state allows him everything I just discussed. And they want him to come there because they don't have the limits on bottle sales, and they not requiring him to build the still and everything else. So he would like to be able to do that in his own state in addition to doing it in a state like Arizona. But as Representative McCoy is very passionate about, he has a vision for his own community in Bardstown. Bardstown widely considers itself as the bourbon capital of the world, and that is the epicenter of most of our distilleries. And he envisions satellite tasting rooms where M.B. Rowland and others, whether it's New Riff and Boone County that are in other parts of the state, to be able to open up a storefront in the square of Bardstown, which is the epicenter, and be able to offer their merchandise, whether it's hats and T-shirts and glasses, be able to offer a free sample of their product, and if somebody liked it, to be able to buy a bottle of bourbon and potentially be able to do a cocktail there or something else, all within the town square. And he envisions, because of Bardstown's epicenter, that maybe every distillery in the state would want to have a storefront, much like Napa does in the city of Napa and in Healdsburg in Sonoma County. That's what those look like. I just came back from there this past weekend on a little bit of an expedition to learn what it was all about, and they have tasting rooms all over the place, and they're very popular. They work well with their restaurants, their retail, their boutiques, and everything else. So that is a huge piece of this legislation. There are a few other smaller parts that are privileges that we're asking for parity with beer and wine on, craft beer that have these privileges in Kentucky that we don't have. But again, it lowers the barrier to entry so that these 2,000 distilleries, 2,200 that are in other states, would want to come here because we will allow them to do this as a small business as they get up and going. And that's to be able to sell bottles at fairs and festivals, make sure farmers markets are an opportunity that if they invite us, that we can get a special license and go offer our product there. And then barrel-aged cocktails. So just as a side note, that this is relatively a non-controversial piece. If you've been into a bar and seen a small barrel on the side of the bar where somebody has pre-batched Manhattans or Old Fashions, and they barrel age them for a few weeks and then they pour out of those, very popular in especially our craft bartenders that want to do this. That technically is illegal because it's not being dispensed from its original container. And original containers can be no larger than a 1.75 ounce. So this just defines a barrel-aged or batched cocktail and allows a bar to do that, serve it from behind the bar and serve it to a patron. And then there is a provision that's been out there in the Senate a couple of times, last two sessions, last provision, creating a limited non-quota package license. It's not a high priority for the KDA itself, but Representative McCoy wanted to have that in the bill, and that's to allow a hotel or restaurant or bar, if they do a private barrel package, that they can sell that package by the bottle from their bar. So if somebody takes a drink of it, says, wow, that's really good, I'd like to buy a whole bottle so I can take it home, it gives them that privilege to do so. There are some areas that no longer have quotas for that restaurant to get a package license in order to sell that bottle. So it's kind of a quota issue, Senator Higdon, that you're very familiar with it. So it does create a very limited non-quota package license for the sale of a private barrel select or an antique spirit only, no other products. So that's a mouthful and a long explanation.
Well, we appreciate you being here and your testimony and everything that you do for our signature, one of our signature industries, and a great friend of this committee, and always good to work with you. We do have a couple questions and comments. Senator Adams has been anxiously waiting to ask her question.
I just can't wait to ask my question. Thank you all for being here today. and I see the bill language in front of us, the BR 104. Okay, and that looks like it takes care of I'm trying to figure out if you have 4 needs of the industry that you're going to be presenting to the 22 session, what exactly, what form are those going to take? Are you all going to have an individual tax bill? Are you going to have the parity bill? Kind of explain what your architecture is for moving forward.
We think it's relatively 2 silos. One is a tax/revenue bill that is not in your packets.
Okay.
And it's a conversation that's going to go on with the A&R committee and leadership about what you can do on a taxing front.
And I don't mean to interrupt too, but I think I might, there has been some conversation about this, Madam Senator Adams, but I think your leadership, you guys are kind of getting together with them as far as that and how they're going to do that, how you're going to break that up.
And that probably would originate out of the House, obviously.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the second is this piece of legislation that encompasses everything on these last 2 slides that I just explained. Private barrels all the way down to
the parity
issues. Yes, that is what's contained in this bill.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And we appreciate you bringing that here today. Have a couple of other Senator. Let's see here, Representative Bratcher. You've been waiting a long time.
Not that long. Just a comment and I have older I get, and my old Navy friends, they always want to come here, and you know what they want to do when they come, and I'm talking like 5 or 6 in the last 2 years. They want to go see a distillery. And it's one of them's just obsessed with it, and I'm have to quit answering his calls. But would you say that this bill, or these bills, whatever form they take, is more attracting new distilleries or just keeping the ones we have here, if you had to guess? And then I have one more questions after that.
I would think it would be both, but Eric?
Yes, sir. Great question. It would be both. The distilleries that are here certainly would enjoy these privileges and be able to expand their tourism centers. Of that $5.1 billion in investment, a lot of that is tourism right now and expanding production. And as Chris mentioned, other states right now are changing their laws and adapting very quickly, allowing unlimited bottle sales and private barrel selections and things like this. So in order for us to compete with all these other states and attract those distilleries here, we need to have similar laws on the books here, so it's not something that they'd have to give up if they came here.
Well, as much as I just complained about them wanting to come here, I want them to keep wanting to come here, because it burns me when I see I think there was a West Virginia bourbon or something, and it's like, man, that's not bourbon, that's whiskey. So we want to keep the Kentucky thing going. But, we have a film tax credits, and I see Stephanie in the back. She used to bug everybody about that all the time. But that is, you like in Georgia, you have a lot of TV and movie shows going there, and like that's the new Hollywood. And I don't want Kentucky to be the new Hollywood, but I do want them to be the Hollywood of bourbon. And you think this is? Are you familiar with that tax credit we give the film?
Very familiar.
Is this like that,
Yes.
so to speak? Yeah.
This is very much like that, almost identical to that we would get a refund. Our distilleries would get a refundability of our tax credits. We think that is kind of step 1 in the process. We don't see it as being refundable for the next 100 years necessarily. We think once the tax code progresses in the next couple of sessions, and if you all look at school funding, because our barrel taxes are embedded in some school funding, that we can be backed out of that type of calculation. And once that's done, to keep our local communities whole, then really what's happening are our barrels that are our 10 million barrels that are in warehouses right now are part of the production process. But the state right now, the way the statutes are written, doesn't recognize that we are part of the production process. And so thus it's being taxed. We want to say it's part of the production process. It is not a finished good. and you all only taxed finished goods once they've gotten there. So kind of a convoluted way of saying we can fix it properly so that you're not taxing us during the manufacturing process. And then lastly, to your comments about your buddies that want to come, we don't want them to start calling somebody in Texas saying, hey, we want to
No,
go
we
there
don't.
to visit a bourbon distillery in Texas. We want them to come here.
And one real quick is
quick.
The barrel tax is separate from the inventory tax that we supposedly took care of, right?
It looks similar, but it's separate.
We didn't take care of it with what we did.
No.
4 years. Okay, thank you.
Okay, the clock is at 12:14, and I was planning on being done at 12:15. And we have 3 people who are on the list.
Stop the clock.
I'm going to recognize all 3 of them, but I ask that they respect the time. First, we have Representative no, we have 4 people on the list. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will only ask one question, and that is, so rather than going into the future of the 3-tier system, which every time you come, it kind of attacks that, I guess, would there be limits on a bar, restaurant, retailer, consumer of how many barrels they could buy? I mean, is this unlimited? Is there a finite number you have in mind? And I have not read the bill. It just showed
Sure.
up on my email.
At this point, it is unlimited. There are no limits, although there are self-imposed limits that are.
So there are no limits.
So the answer is no.
No government mandated limits.
Yeah.
There are free market limits that are in place because we
Sure.
we need our product to get to all corners of the globe. And the
Okay.
more barrels we pull out of our inventory is less that goes into the other parts of the globe.
Okay, and I was really thinking about per consumer, per individual restaurant or whatever. So thank you.
Senator Thayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to address my question to Eric, the president of the association, rather than go through your contract lobbyist, if you don't mind.
Okay.
By the way, to the comment from Representative Bratcher, under the United States federal law, bourbon does not have to be made in Kentucky. It should be, but other people recognize the runway, the huge runway ahead for bourbon, and they're making it. And I've seen it firsthand. I was in Denver last month at a place that has a bottled and bond warehouse, and they're serving 4-year-old bottled and bond bourbon, and they say that the mile high air
altitude,
there.
right. Yeah.
It's definitely a mile, but it's a lot higher than it used to be for different reasons that we won't get into today. So it's happening.
It is.
Your
And,
question?
we're the leader, and people are going to try to take shots at us.
That's exactly right, sir.
Here's my question for you, and I'm not sure I agree with the ABC's interpretation. And why now? Barrel selects have been going on for years.
That's correct.
Through multiple administrations, multiple administrators there at ABC. So I'm questioning their opinion on that and the timing and why. But that's a topic that we might have to drag them before this committee to ask. But let's say we don't pass a law clarifying this. Do you think that they're going to be like the Gestapo and go around to every distillery and shut down all the barrel select programs?
They've made it clear to us, and we are appreciative that we have a grace period until the end of the session to get a fix on this. And let me be clear that they're not standing in the way of us getting that fix. They actually want to work with us to make sure that it is grounded in statute and available and done legally in the right way.
All right, I appreciate that too. I just don't like a regulatory agency trying to dictate to the General Assembly, the elected representatives of the people, what we're supposed to do. But,
right.
I think this is very important, and we do need to address it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Senator Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for your presentation. There's 10 million barrels of bourbon stored in Kentucky, and I'm proud to say that half of them are stored in my district. Very proud of that fact. That's right. It's true. Used to be before the ad valorem tax, there was about 4 million barrels. So with that tax or that credit in place, the bourbon industry has boomed. Yes. Now there is a difference in between ad valorem tax and the barrel tax, correct? Two different taxes.
It is the same thing.
Same one.
It is the same tax,
Well,
yes, sir.
Because we tax the barrels also.
That's the barrel tax we're talking about, sir. Yes, sir.
But ad valorem taxes the liquor inside the barrel, correct?
It is. We're talking about the same thing, just a different word for it. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm splitting hairs. Okay, that answers that question. But so again, it's exploded. The bourbon industry has, and if we eliminate it or make it fully refundable, that's part of what has spurred the bourbon industry, is because to get that money back, you got to invest it.
Correct.
So what do you see in your crystal ball will happen to investment in Kentucky if we completely eliminate that tax?
Well, you're going to have $33 million immediately going back into facilities, constructions, and new jobs created. You're exactly right. This General Assembly, thankfully, in 2014, set us on this path with the bourbon barrel tax reinvestment credit. And again, we volunteered as an industry to take that money and reinvest that back in our facilities. And look how the explosion's gone. I mean, we're now over 10 million barrels for the first time in Kentucky's history. So I think if we can start to get that money back, that instead of tying that money up in Uncle Sam, if we can get it back and put it in the facilities and create more jobs, you're going to see 12, 15, 20 million barrels stored in Kentucky over the
very next meeting, first thing on agenda, we're going to have Damon Thayer do the elasticity. Is that the way it's going?
Correct.
One final thing, Mr. Chairman. Like I said, I'm a supporter of the bourbon industry and want to make sure that it's protected and continues to grow. But I'm also a believer in the 3-tier system, and we nibble around the edges every session on that. So just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Well, and I'm a believer with you there, Senator. And lastly, we have the great supporter of the bourbon industry, Representative Gentry. Where are you, Representative? There you are.
Over here, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And I will be very brief. And hi, guys. Thanks for being here. And a lot of pieces to this and a lot of questions. I'm sure we'll be entertaining these questions as we move along. And I'll just reiterate my colleague here, Senator, who just talked about the 3-tier system. Actually, both of them did. And obviously the other two are going to feel like they're losing selling opportunities as well. So we'll work our way through that. Eric, I got one question for you specifically. I know one of the struggles that your industry has had is with this tariffs, especially in the European markets, and it kind of blew up in the last administration. Hey, do you see any change there, or what is your viewing in the future? Crystal ball. I know it's crystal balling in effect. Is there any kind of change at all?
Worried, anxious. This hair keeps getting grayer every year this goes on. We still have a 25% tariff in the EU and the UK, and that is set to double on December 1st. And if that becomes, we've lost over $200 to $300 million in exports. The EU used to be our largest export market. Now it's second or third. And if you double that, it's going to be a crippling blow to the industry and will effectively drive many of our distillers out of the European market. So when you hear us at distilleries or see anybody on TV talking about this, we're not. This isn't the sky's falling. This is really serious. We've got to get those tariffs removed in order for us to continue this global growth, because it could ruin us for a generation or two.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You are welcome. Before we adjourn, I would like to remind the members that the Kentucky Distillers Association will be hosting a luncheon directly after the meeting at their new offices at 100 Capitol Avenue, and we hope that you can attend. There's additional parking available at the VFW Hall across the street. Our next meeting will be on Thursday, November 18th at 11 a.m. in this same room. Without objection, we stand adjourned.